The first time he said, "Excuse me," in our own kitchen, I felt my body step aside like it didn't belong there. When it began, it was simple in a way that made me trust it. He didn't rush me. He didn't try to impress me with a louder version of himself. He was just there, present. The kind of present that makes you stop checking your phone because you don't need anything else. We used to meet late after work, when the streets were quieter and the air smelled like asphalt cooling down. He'd walk beside me with his hands in his jacket pockets, and every so often his shoulder would bump mine, small, accidental contact that didn't feel accidental at all. His laugh had this softness to it. Not big, not performative, like he was trying not to scare the moment away. He remembered things I didn't realize I'd said. A name, a detail, the way I took my coffee, the fact that I hated overhead lights. When I stayed at his place, he'd leave the little lamp on by the couch instead of turning on the ceiling light, and he'd say, "This is better, right?" Like he was building a world that didn't exhaust me. We talked the way people talk when they still want to be known. Not deep confessions every night, just honest, unrushed. He'd ask, "What did you keep thinking about today?" and actually wait for the answer. I remember one night, really late, the kind of late where the city feels like it's holding its breath. We ate cereal out of mugs because he didn't want to dirty bowls. We sat on the floor with our backs against the couch. The TV was on but muted. The only sound was the spoon hitting the ceramic and the occasional car passing outside. He looked at me and said, almost casually, "I don't feel the need to be different around you." It didn't land like a line. It landed like truth. Moving in together felt like a continuation, not a milestone. He already had my shampoo in his shower. I already had his hoodie in my car. We were carrying each other in small ways before we ever carried boxes. Our first week in the new apartment, we didn't have curtains yet. At night, the streetlight spilled in through the bare window and painted the walls a dull amber. We laid on the mattress on the floor and talked about nothing, grocery lists, bad neighbors, which drawer should be mine. It was domestic in the sweetest way, like love had finally stopped running and decided to sit down. He'd brush his teeth beside me and bump my hip with his, like a private hello. When he walked past me, he'd touch the back of my neck for half a second, just to remind me we were connected. I didn't think about losing him then. I didn't even know you could lose someone while they were still in the room. The shift didn't announce itself. It came in quietly, disguised as normal life. It started with being tired. He'd come home and loosen his tie with one hand, eyes already dull from the day. He'd kiss me fast cheek, not mouth, and say, "Long day." I'd say, "Same." And it would end there, like we'd both agreed not to open anything we couldn't close. Then it became scheduling. "Can we eat later? Do you mind if I finish this email? I'll be in the bedroom on a call." All reasonable, all harmless. Until one day I realized I'd stopped telling him things the moment they happened. Not because I didn't want to share, because I didn't want to interrupt whatever he was doing. I noticed we started saying, "Thank you too much. Thanks for taking the trash. Thanks. Thank you." Not gratitude. Maintenance. We said sorry the same way. "Sorry, I didn't know you were using that." "Sorry, I'll turn it down." "Sorry, I'm just stressed." It wasn't hostility. It was carefulness. Like we were both trying to be easy to live with. Like being easy might save us. The apartment still had the warm lamp in the corner. The same one. But the light started to feel like a memory of intimacy instead of the thing itself. At night, the TV stayed on longer. Not because we were watching, because it prevented silence from becoming conversation. He'd sit on one end of the couch, his phone in his hand, thumb moving in that slow, endless scroll. I'd sit on the other end, legs tucked under me, pretending I didn't notice how often he smiled at the screen. Sometimes I'd say something small, an opening. "Look at this. Did you hear about? I had the weirdest moment today." And he'd answer kindly. That was the confusing part. Kindness with no weight. "Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, I can see that." Then his eyes would drop back to the phone, like the moment had been handled. I started doing quiet tests I didn't admit were tests. I'd stop texting first. I'd stop reaching for his hand in the car. I'd come home and wait to see if he'd ask about my day before I offered it. Sometimes he did. Often he didn't. And the nights he didn't seem like he was withholding. He seemed like it simply didn't occur to him. That hurt in a way I couldn't explain without sounding dramatic. Because how do you say, "I miss being on your mind," without making it sound like an accusation? So I swallowed it. I learned how to keep my disappointment quiet. I learned how to make loneliness look like calm. One night I cooked dinner and set the table like I was trying to remind us of something. I didn't announce it. I didn't make it a point. I just did it. 2 plates, 2 glasses. The lamp dimmed. The overhead light off. He sat down and said, "This looks great." "Thank you." He ate. He talked about work and headlines, not stories. His phone buzzed once, and he checked it without thinking. Then again, and again. I didn't say anything. I watched his face. Not angry, not guilty, just elsewhere. After a while, I asked softly, "Are you okay?" After dinner, I washed dishes with the faucet running too loud. He sat on the couch, TV on, volume low. I wanted him to get up, to come behind me, to say, "Hey," to put his arms around my waist like he used to. He didn't. The water kept running. The sponge squeaked against the plate. The warm lamp made the room look gentle, but nothing about it felt gentle anymore. Later, I went to bed before him, not to punish him, because lying beside him while he scrolled felt like pretending. He came in quietly, like a guest. The mattress shifted. He whispered, "Night." I whispered, "Night." And I lay there in the dark thinking, we've gotten so good at not needing anything from each other. The moment that lodged itself in me happened a week later. It was past midnight. The apartment was mostly dark, only the lamp in the living room spilling warm light into the hallway. I was in the kitchen, rinsing a glass I hadn't finished, staring at nothing. I heard his footsteps behind me, slow, careful. He stopped, like he was deciding where to place himself. Then, softly, politely, he said, "Sorry, can I just grab?" I moved before he finished the sentence. I stepped aside like a reflex. "Yeah, of course," I said. "Sorry." We apologized to each other in our own home. He opened the fridge. Cool blue light washed over his face and hands. He reached for a bottle of water and said, "Thanks." He didn't touch me. He didn't look at me. He didn't mean anything by it. But something inside me went very still, because I realized we weren't quiet because we were peaceful. We were quiet because we were careful. After the kitchen, I started hearing our apartment differently. The cabinets closing softly, the bathroom fan running too long, the little clicks of his phone when he tapped through things. Even his footsteps changed lighter, like he didn't want to take up space. He wasn't doing it to punish me. That's what made it hard to name. If he'd been angry, I could have pushed back. If he'd been cruel, I could have left cleanly. But he was polite, cooperative, low maintenance, and I could feel myself becoming the same. I tried to catch myself before I disappeared completely. I'd stand in the doorway of the living room and watch him, waiting for the moment he looked up and saw me without me having to speak first. Some nights he did. He'd smile and say, "Hey." Other nights, he'd be so absorbed, work, messages, whatever was on the screen, that I could have been a piece of furniture. And I hated that I started measuring love that way, with eye contact, with seconds. But that's what happens when the big things are fine and the small things are gone. You start begging the details to prove you're still chosen. The realization came on a night that looked normal from the outside. We were in bed. The room was dim, lit only by the warm spill from the hallway lamp because he'd forgotten to turn it off again. The sheets smelled like detergent. The air was cool where the blanket didn't cover us. He was on his side, phone in his hand. I was facing him, pretending I was just resting my eyes. His screen reflected faintly on his cheekbones. He smiled at something small, private, and then he made a sound I hadn't heard in a while. Not a laugh, something softer, like amusement that still had warmth in it. I waited for him to turn and show me, for him to say, "Look at this," the way he used to. He didn't. He just kept scrolling, thumb steady, like the world inside the phone was the only one that asked anything of him. I heard myself whisper, very quietly, "What are you looking at?" He paused like he had to come back to the room. Then he tilted the screen slightly away, not hiding it, just instinctively keeping it his. "Nothing," he said. "Just stuff. Just stuff." Then, after a beat, because he's not a bad person, he added, "Sorry. I didn't mean to keep you up." That was the moment. Not because he was on his phone. Not because he wasn't showing me. Because he thought the problem was my sleep. He thought closeness was a noise level issue. And I realized he didn't understand what I was asking for anymore. I turned onto my back and stared at the ceiling. The paint had a small crack near the corner that I'd been meaning to tell our landlord about for months. I didn't say anything else. I didn't push. I didn't make it a moment. I just felt this slow, undeniable shift inside me, the kind that isn't dramatic enough to call a breakup, but permanent enough to change how you breathe. Because I knew then that even if I explained it perfectly, he'd still hear it as a complaint. And I couldn't handle being translated into a problem. The next day, I got my hair cut. Not drastically, just enough that someone who loved me would notice without trying. When I walked in, he looked up from the couch. "Hey," he said. "How was it?" "Good," I said, and waited. He nodded. "Good." His eyes dropped back to his laptop. I went to the bathroom and looked at myself in the mirror with the harsh light on. My face looked tired in a way makeup couldn't hide. My hair framed my cheeks differently. I looked like someone new, and I realized how long it had been since I'd felt seen without having to ask for it. That night, I cooked again, but smaller. Just pasta. No candle. No trying to recreate anything. We ate at the table. He asked me if I wanted more Parmesan. I said no. He said, okay. Then, like we were in a waiting room, he asked, "Did you pay the electric bill?" I said yes. He said, "Thanks." And the conversation ended. Neat. Complete. I looked at his hands on the table, familiar hands, the same veins, the same nails I used to hold in mine, and it hit me that we were doing life correctly. We were functioning. But love wasn't supposed to feel like functioning. I didn't want to be dramatic. That was always my fear, being too much, being the reason things got heavy. So I kept my voice light. I said, "No worries," even when it worried me. I said, "It's fine," even when it wasn't. I said, "I'm just tired," because it was easier than saying, "I feel alone with you." And the worst part is, he liked me like that. He seemed relieved when I asked for less. So I did. I asked for less and less until I couldn't recognize myself. I didn't decide to leave on a specific day. I just started imagining what it would feel like to come home and not have to wonder if I was allowed to speak. I started noticing how tense my shoulders were when I walked through our door. Like I was entering a space where I had to be quiet to be loved. One Friday, he texted me, "Running late. Don't wait up." It wasn't wrong. It was considerate. But I stared at the message and felt nothing. No disappointment, no missing him, just the flatness of information. So when he came home close to midnight and found me on the couch with the lamp on, he looked surprised, like I'd broken routine. "Hey," he said softly. He took his shoes off carefully. "Why are you up?" I shrugged. Couldn't sleep. He nodded like that made sense. Then he said, "Do you want me to make you tea?" That question used to melt me. It used to mean, "I'm here. I'm taking care of you." But in that moment it sounded like, "How can I solve this quickly so we can go back to normal?" I said, "No, it's okay." He hesitated, like he was waiting for the real problem to appear. Then he said, "Okay, night," and he walked down the hall. The lamp kept glowing in the corner, warm and gentle, like it was trying to soften a cold truth. I sat there and understood something with a calm I didn't recognize. We weren't in a relationship anymore. We were in a routine that remembered one. The next morning, I packed an overnight bag. Not everything, not a statement, just enough to create a small distance that was mine, not ours. He was in the kitchen when I walked out, wiping down the counter like he always did. The sun coming through the blinds made pale stripes on the floor. The apartment looked clean and calm and quietly unbearable. He glanced at the bag and blinked once. "Where are you going?" I kept my voice gentle. "My sister's, just for a couple days." He nodded slowly, like he was trying to be the right kind of supportive. "Okay," he said. "Do you want me to come with you?" It wasn't a dramatic offer. It was the offer of someone who sensed a change, but didn't know where to put his hands. I shook my head. "No, I need some space." He exhaled, relieved and hurt at the same time. "Okay, yeah, if that's what you need." Then, after a pause, he added, "Text me when you get there." I nodded. "I will." He didn't stop me. He didn't hold my hand. He didn't ask what was wrong in a way that made room for a real answer. He just watched me put my shoes on. And I realized we were good at endings, too, as long as they were quiet. At my sister's, the guest room was too cold. The blanket smelled like fabric softener and dust. I lay there listening to the unfamiliar creaks of her house. And still, my body unclenched. My phone buzzed around midnight. "Did you get there okay?" I stared at the message for a long time. My thumbs hovered over the screen. I wanted to type everything. I wanted to type nothing. I typed, "Yeah, I'm here." He replied, "Okay, good night." I stared at the word good night like it was a door closing softly. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if we'll call it a break or a breakup or just a phase we never come back from. I only know this. When I think of our apartment, I don't picture our bed. I picture the kitchen, the fridge light, the way he said sorry before reaching past me, and the way I moved. Like love was something you had to make room for.